Hey guys, here's a really quick video about building your game. So let's say that you finished all the scenes, you've tested out most of the game in Unity, and you're ready to see what it looks like when you build it. We'll go through some of the steps. The big three main steps are checking the game settings, and then checking the player settings. I'll show you that window, and then actually building it for the different deployments. First thing that we want to do is you want to check your ability to be able to build for Mac, Windows, and eventually WebGL if you want to. If you're doing something like itch.io, it's really convenient if you can build your game for WebGL, especially if it's not a very intensive game. Because WebGL games don't have a lot of resources in the browser. So, of course, something for a PC or a Mac is gonna have more resources built into it. But if you do this, you could get more plays if you want to, depending on the type of game that you make. So in order to check if you are able to make any of these builds, Mac, Windows, or GL, you want to first pull up your Unity hub. All of you should have this somewhere on your system, and maybe this is the way that you get to your games that you're building. So normally it pulls up like this, and you can see what version of Unity that your game is built on at the current state, and you might have more than one version of Unity, and that's totally fine. I have a few different versions, and at any given stage of your deployment, you normally don't want to change it when you're working on a certain game, and that's one of the reasons you might have multiple versions. But now that you're ready to build your game, the next step is to make sure that you actually have the capability to build for these different platforms. How do we do that? We're going to drop down to our installs, and this is where all the different Unities that you have are shown here, and you can double check with the project that you're working with. This shows you which version your current game is using. So for me, I'm using 2019 2.3 F1. I'll go over here and find the install that corresponds with that, and these little icons represent the ability to build for those different platforms. It could be for PC, iOS, Apple TV, etc. And if you don't see any icons on there, that means that you haven't downloaded the proper modules to do that, and that's totally fine. It's a lot easier than it was before to get that capability. Before you had to reinstall Unity altogether, but this is how you do it. You click these triple dots right here. I think people call this green beans or something like that. Click on this guy, and you should be able to see this menu that gives you three options. The one that we want to use is add modules. Click on this guy, and you should see a checkbox style menu. And if you don't have things installed yet, these things should be lit up, I think, light blue, and you can check the ones that you want to add. Let's say that right now I don't have a Linux build support. I would check that. Maybe I want to have different language capabilities or have Facebook Game Room built-in support. I would check that. After you've hit that, then you would hit done, and you'll notice that there'll be a blue bar that starts to progress from left to right, and that is showing you that it's downloading the proper modules to make that happen. So for example, let's say that for me, I might be using 3.11, and I don't have the ability to build for Mac or PC. Let's just go over back into Unity just to see if you know you can do that. One way to see it is on these icons, or when you go finally to your build settings and you try to build, your target platform will be able to drop down here for the major consoles. I'm sorry, not consoles, for PC, Mac. And if you don't see those here, then you need to navigate to this screen here and click on the three dots corresponding to the version of Unity that you want to add the modules to. Click on add modules, and you should be able to select the ones that you want. So in this case, let's just say that I want to download all of these. I'll check all these boxes and then hit done. The next thing that you should see is this blue bar start to progress. And if it's grayed out like this, that means that Unity is installing modules, so you can't load this version of Unity. It may take a while depending on your internet speed. Of course, it's pulling something from the internet, so it may take some time. When it's finished, this icon should light up full opacity, and you should be able to open it up. Now that you've done that, we can go back to steps 1 and 2. We're going to check our game settings, and then we're going to check this player window settings. So what are we looking for here? We want to find if we want to determine our game view, and we should have figured this out early in our development. If you haven't watched my video on screen size, make sure you look at that. I'll throw up a link right now. You should see it somewhere floating over here. Where's my mouse icon? Where is my mouse icon? Oh, I guess it's gone. Cursor Pro. Turn you on. Okay, great. I'll throw the link on the determining your game window size up soon. So if we go over here, I'm going to close this window real fast. We want to make sure that we have determined our game window. And for me, I've been building this game for 1920 by 1080. Maybe yours is a different size, maybe 1024-78. And of course, you know, this changes the view of the game. And by now you should have determined what the optimum game view is for your game. So when we come back to our game settings, we're going to go to File, Build Settings, and we want to look at a few things. Beyond just the game view, which we've just made note of, we want to make sure that all the scenes that we want to go in our game are inside the scenes in build. Unity probably wouldn't have been able to load the game, the scenes when you're testing your game, but we want to double check that all the scenes that we want to have on here are in this window. If we don't, then they're not going to be in the build. Okay, so make sure that you drag in the scenes that you're going to be using from your project window into this area. Cool. So that's mostly step one. Now we go to step two. Now we want to make sure that depending on what build we're going to be building, of what type of platform we're going to be building for, we need to check some settings. So how do we get there again? Maybe that window wasn't there. We go to File, Build Settings, and this is going to pull this up. We want to make sure that we select the proper platform because it's going to change some settings if we don't. Select PC, Mac, or Linux standalone, and this icon corresponds with the current platform deployment. Then we'll select if we have it Mac or PC. If you have downloaded, if you've gone through these steps and this is lit up and you don't see your Windows option, because you can see that this Windows support is there, but I don't see it in this window, you can just quit Unity and reload your project. So I just recently downloaded the Windows capability build and it didn't show up in my build settings. So I go back here and reload my project one. That was the one that I had just pulled up. It'll take a second. It's not a big deal. It's making sure that all the modules are there. So it's just like what we had before, but we should be able to see now in our file build settings that the two capabilities are there now. Cool. So let's say that I'm building for Windows, because most of you are probably doing that. It's gonna recompile some things, which is totally fine. It may take a second. And the next thing that we want to do is go to our, look at these steps here. We want to go to our player window. So click on this guy, player settings. It's going to bring up a separate window. Drag this over here. It may appear that it's like shrunk down. We want to pull this over, and there's a bunch of tabs over here. Make sure that we're looking at player here. Here we customize some of the settings that the end user is going to see. You can change your company to something that you can call yourself, or whatever your group wants to call yourself. I call a lot of my games Pretty Kitty Games. You can find that online. And you can give your game a title. So this is the name that's going to appear here. So let's call this, what do I call it? Skelly's Adventure, I believe. Main menu. Skelly's Adventure. So this is where I would type this. The version is going to be important if you want to iterate through this, depending on what platform you deploy to, like iOS or Android. Anything that's going to be hosting your games wants to know the version of it, and you should constantly be changing this. Some platforms, if you don't change this value, will say, oh, you just uploaded a version that's the same value. We can't take this new build. So this is something you should be conscious of. depending on where you're hosting your games after you built them. And then you can drag in a default icon. This is going to be the thing that appears on people's desktops when they download them. So it's just like, let's say this is Ableton Live icon. You can give your game its own icon. And most of the time it's like a 32 by 32 or 128 by 28, a square size icon. And you can select it, and it's going to be from your project window. So all these sprites that we've already been using, you can reuse as an icon. So this is not a square icon, and this is the most square one that I have right now. And so I've chosen that to be my game icon. Hit select, put it in there like that. Cool. Diving more into it, there's a whole bunch of settings that we don't need to talk about, and I'll include a link at the bottom of this video so you can check out more details. The most important parts are, first, when we're dealing with Windows or Mac, we're going to use this version, because if we click on a different tab, it's for a different deployment. This is Apple TV, obviously, and this is Android or iOS. And this is WebGL if you end up doing that. But the main one that we want to look at is this downloadable build. Secondly, some of these things might appear accordion style, so we've already drug in one default icon, and we can override these with different icons. Next one is resolution. It's probably the most important one for your game. You decide whether or not your game can be played in full screen mode or not. Secondly, does your game, if someone changes focus of your game, let's say that they're playing your game and something appears on their screen in email, is your game going to continue to run in the background if they switch focus? Does your timer still run? Will they lose the game if they switch and check your email because the time runs out? This is up to you. If you uncheck this, then time stops. And if they come back, then it's going to come back. So make sure you check out this and look at the other settings that linked below, obviously. Standalone version. Other important things to look at are none of these at the moment. Go back to, now go to splash image. This is kind of cool because this is sort of like a nicety for your game, in that when your game loads, you can put some personality to your game, especially if you establish yourself as a studio or an identity, some branding. You can have some logos that appear on your splash scene. So if normally you shouldn't see any of these guys on here, and let's see if I can remove these. This menu is usually empty, and what's going to happen is if you hit this preview button, it's going to splash with the Unity logo if you have the free version, but then you can add some of your own branding to it. Right now I've added a background image which represents one of these ships from my space game, and then you can also have some logos. So let's say that you happen to have a sponsor or somebody that has been giving you money in your game, and it's the barrel icon. They want you to have this on here. You can add this logo by hitting the plus and then selecting that logo, and maybe you have more than one identity that you want to allow to be shown. So let's say that my other sponsor is the one of my enemies from my space game. I want these two to show up. I have two of them now, and you can change the way that it gets shown. You can have it light on dark, dark on light. Dolly style means that it's going to be moving, so have some sort of motivated camera movement in it. You can see those two pop up at the start of your game. Cool. And so like that's not necessary, but it's a nice thing if you want to add some branding or to your game. Other types of things that are less important for 2D style games is not in here. I think those are the most important things. The other things are are very specific depending on the deployment that you want. If we're happy with all those things, then we can close this. And now we're ready to build. So we're going to go to File, Build Settings, click on this guy, and we can hit Build. It's going to take a second. Right now it's building for Windows, so I can't really demo it. I'm going to change this over to Mac OS. My settings that I had before are going to keep regarding the icons and all those things. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to hit Build. And I want to do this Mac version just so you can see it being pulled up. So I'm going to pick I'm going to have it deployed to my desktop, and I'm going to call this Skelly's Adventure. hit save. It may take a moment for it to compile everything. I only have like 3 scenes, so it's not too intensive, not too many sprites involved. And once it's finished, you should be able to see, you might get a notification when it's finished, and maybe I'll just allow that. And you can see here, there's my icon that I had picked, Skelly's Adventure. If I double click on it now, then it should pull up the game in full screen mode. There's that barrel, there's the enemy. I don't know if you can hear the music right now. Maybe you can hear it now. And there's my soundtrack. Hit start, takes me into the game. Shoot my fireballs. If it hits things, then they play their explosion animation. Let's see, can I collect my keys? Got my 2 coins. Gonna head to the door. Oh no! Oh, I didn't set a restart to this game. So let's try one more time. There, I'm level 2, same thing. Great. So, after you've built your game, definitely test it out. Make sure that the elements that you hope to be available are there. And if you need to make some adjustments, make those adjustments and then rebuild the game. After you set those settings for the build settings, then they should be fine and you shouldn't have to redo them again. Cool, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please post them on the Discord. Talk to you later. Thanks. Bye.